Hi all. Since we're avoiding gatherings of our community during the ongoing pandemic, we're going to be moving some Machar programming online. We'll also try to do a few more online-only opportunities over the next few weeks so that those of us restricting our movements have a chance to connect with community beyond our homes and offices. One thing I'll be doing for the next few weeks is something we do a little less of at Machar, but that I've started doing at some of our Havdalah celebrations, which is to talk about the regular Torah portion that much of the Jewish world reads in a given week. Now, usually this is chanted in a lot of synagogues, but if you've heard me sing, you'll be relieved to know that I will not be chanting the weekly Torah portion on a video. Instead, I'll be talking a little bit about what's in that Torah portion and looking for some more universally human ideas rather than really digging into the guts of the legal stuff that is frankly less important for a lot of modern Jews. And this week's Torah portion is Tisa. So most of the weekly portions get a name from one or two words that come early in the Torah portion. And Tisa appears at the beginning of the second verse of this Torah portion. And Tisa means something like when you carry, and what it's really describing is what happens when you carry out a census. So the census it's talking about is figuring out how many people there are so that they know how many people are supposed to give money to help build the tabernacle that the Israelites are supposed to be worshiping at in the wilderness. So we learn about how much they're supposed to give. We learn about who's supposed to build the tabernacle. We learn what the incense is supposed to be made out of. And that's not all very interesting stuff for a lot of us, although it is important for the rabbis who will use some of this information to figure out what you're not supposed to do on Shabbat. But there's other interesting stuff that happens in this section of the Torah, and one of them is something that we've all probably talked about at some point. And if you've seen the Ten Commandments, you've seen a reenactment or enactment of this, and that's the episode of the golden calf. And we sort of know the general outline of that story. Moses is up on Mount Sinai receiving commandments, and the Israelites get impatient, which is sort of what the Israelites always do. And they say to Aaron, he's not coming down, build us an idol so that we can worship something that's familiar to us. Aaron resists a little, then caves in. And we are told that Moses is talking to Yahweh, and Yahweh says, hey, call your office. In essence, something's going on down there, and you really need to get back down there and figure out what it is. So Moses walks down Mount Sinai carrying those first set of 10 commandments and finds people worshiping a golden calf and dancing around and doing all kinds of things, and he kind of loses it, smashes the tablets, calls to him all of the Levites who are still loyal, and has the Levites go on a rampage where they kill about 3,000 people. And apparently Yahweh decides that that's not good enough, so then Yahweh calls down a plague and kills a few more people. We don't actually get a number for how many were supposedly killed. So it's a pretty eventful Torah portion, but we're not actually done yet. Because, of course, Moses now has to go back up, get another set of 10 commandments, and at this point starts negotiating with Yahweh to say, well, will you lead us through the wilderness instead of an angel? And I'd really like to see you face to face. Which Moses is told he can't really do fully, but we'll figure out a surrogate. So get in this rock and turn your back, and I'll show you the back side of me and not the front side of me, and it gets involved. And none of this stuff is particularly universalizable human wisdom, right? But there is something universal going on in the background. And that's what's interesting from a humanistic Jewish perspective, because we don't base our decisions on what we do based on what the Torah says we should do. We base our decisions on reason and fact, but the Torah sometimes wraps up universal human experiences in a way that makes it a little more accessible to us as a piece of literature. And one of the things that I think is really going on in this story in particular the story of the golden calf, is anxiety. So when you break down the episode of the golden calf, the whole narrative is Moses has gone away. We don't know what happened to him. We don't know when he's coming back. So we want to lapse into something that's familiar. Now, from the Torah's perspective, they're lapsing into something familiar that's actually false. And they know it's false because they've been told it's false and because they've seen wonders worked, right? This is the narrative that the Torah gives us. And then the Torah is really saying, look, you knew it was wrong. Bad things happen when you do the wrong thing. And what makes us do bad things when we're uncomfortable sometimes is anxiety, is lack of familiarity, is being uprooted. We don't know where Moses went, build an idol, even though we know it's wrong, right? That's the anxiety as it presents in the Torah portion. We wrap our anxiety differently, right? But we're often responding to the same urge for security by lapsing into what's familiar. So in the current moment, we want to be told we can go back outside. We want to be told that school and life and work and all the places we want to be are accessible to us. And our nation's leadership has actually given into this same impulse, so much so it may have deceived itself and us by avoiding learning the truth by under-testing for infection rates. Facing the unknown is hard, but it's also clear that right now it's the right thing for us to do. Again, not because the Torah says so. The Torah really has nothing to say about stopping disease and in fact views disease as a punishment. That's not our model. Instead, our model is looking at what happens. What's the most effective thing to keep the largest number of people safe? And right now, that's social distancing, that's the best tool to prevent the spread of a new, highly infectious disease with no vaccine, with limited amounts of testing available, and to try to avoid overwhelming the capacities of a healthcare system where the forecast is most Americans will end up at least as carriers of this virus. We don't want to flood the healthcare system, so we want to slow its spread. We may not be able to prevent people from getting sick, but we may be able to slow it down and save more lives that way. That's anxiety producing, but that's the right thing to do. That's the measure humanistic Judaism has. How do you preserve the largest number of people by doing the most to help and the least to harm? So in the coming weeks, please stay as safe as you can. Follow health authority guidelines on when to seek medical attention for yourself and your loved ones. I'm available for you to check in with. You can text, email, or call, or use Facebook, or use Twitter, or whatever. If you're a little bored, check back on Twitter and Facebook and on YouTube, because you'll see that we've started to put some more things up as time goes on to kind of keep us all engaged and connected to community and to keep us from maybe getting too bored. And we'll be continuing to do that, to work to build a little community even as we're apart. Shabbat Shalom.